Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
We need to roll back the state. We spy on all of our own citizens. Our prisons are flooded with nonviolent drug offenders. If you want to know who America's next enemy is, look at who we're funding right now. Every single one of these problems are a result of government being way too big.
You're listening to Part of the Problem on the Gas Digital Network. Here's your host, Dave Smith.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. Very excited for today's episode. Before we get started, I am, as I record this tomorrow morning, but as you hear this morning, perhaps, on my way out to Austin. Hope to see a bunch of you guys at the Comedy Mothership this week. And then I am touring for the rest of the year. So go to comicdavesmith.com if you want to get tickets. I'm coming all over the place. All right. Very happy to be joined today by, I believe, the first time. Is this the first time we've had John, Brian?
First time, man. I know. Crazy. Yeah.
I was trying my best to avoid it, but eventually I couldn't fight it. Brian McWilliams. He is, of course, a longtime host of the Lions of Liberty podcast, and he is the communications director for the Libertarian Party and a longtime friend. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be on this show because you're teasing this massive announcement coming on Monday, which I have to presume, because I saw Louis J. Gomez also tweeted out this announcement about you and Part of the Problem in Gas Digital, which makes me think it must be the addition of a female co-host that he can sexually molest or intimidate.
Well, you're close. Rob is transitioning. And so there will be, we don't need to save it for Monday, guys.
I was trying to save it. It's your show.
Roberta Bernstein will be going. But no, we do have a big announcement. In fact, after this show, I will be recording the announcement because I'm going to be gone when we're supposed to be announcing it. But yep, major announcement on the future of Part of the Problem. I am quitting. I've done what I need to do. We got Joe Biden over the finish line, and now we move on to bigger tasks. So, but let me ask you, we'll talk a bunch about the Libertarian Party and stuff, but I'm just curious, just as a person existing in the world, because it's all everyone's been talking about for the last couple weeks now. What's your take on all this post first presidential debate fallout and the media switching on a dime? And now, man, I mean, I was just looking at more of it this morning. Man, the knives are out for Joe Biden. It's amazing how quickly everything changes.
I mean, what's awesome to me is seeing people like George Clooney, right? Clooney just had this massive fundraiser, raised $30 million for Joe Biden, and now is like, get out, Joe. Like New York Times, get out, Joe. You're done. You're toast. Like, there is no allegiance. Like, it makes you really see clearly that these people will cycle you through. You mean nothing. And Joe Biden, the puppet's falling off the strings, right? That's what it is. They had him on the puppetry. They propped the man up when he shouldn't have been. They got him into office, and he was a loyal soldier. And now he's not going along with the plan. So clearly, they're looking at the puppet. The puppet's, it's like the same thing. You got a little marionette here. The puppet's talking on its own, like a creepy Twilight Zone episode, and it's time to replace him. So, I mean, in the wake of this, I'm excited to see what happened tonight. Like we're talking Thursday. He's going to talk at the NATO summit. I think that's going to be the definitive moment. If he collapses, if he has a flub, if he looks like the Joe Biden we know he is, I think then you're going to see the pressure mount to the point where he has to get out. But I don't know if you saw, he just had this open letter to the DNC and congressional members that are Democrats, essentially saying, I am going to poison pill you. Like, I'm not leaving. I'm going to take you all down with me. You're hypocrites. You're undermining democracy. If you take me out, you're everything that you said you weren't. So, I mean, that's what's interesting to me is Joe Biden essentially saying, look, I'm taking you all down with me.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And part of it is because you get a little bit of a window into like the actual power plays. Like, how does this really go down when different factions have staunchly different desires? And so, to the point you made, for anybody who hasn't followed it, so George Clooney is known for being like close friends with Barack Obama, and it was reported that he contacted Obama, like he got Obama's approval to write this op-ed saying that Joe Biden needs to step down. So already, first off, he was just at a fundraiser for him, as you mentioned. Now he's calling for him to step down, but the bigger implication there is like, oh, Obama is, pulling out the big guns against him. And you realize that, look, the business interests that, like the real power centers in America, the military industrial complex and Wall Street and big pharma and all of this, they don't want Trump in. But they don't care if Joe Biden's, they just want whoever will beat Donald Trump. And so as soon as they see Biden's not going to be able to beat Donald Trump, the knives are out. However, to your point, Biden has clearly signaled he's going to fight this thing. And it does make you wonder, even for a man who has fallen from the level of mediocre intelligence that Joe Biden started at, the guy has been around for 40 plus years. What type of dirt does he have on other people? Like what you would imagine to survive in that world, you must be doing what you can to protect yourself. And so, man, that adds an interesting wrinkle into all of this.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny, just speaking of like who's got the dirt on who, I'm looking, and this is tangential, but you see Alex Soros, George Soros' son, is now engaged to Huma Abedin, famous, Wiener mistress and Hillary Clinton aide for a long time. I'm wondering who's got the keys to the sex dungeon in Epstein Island in that relationship. Like that, one of them has the keys for sure, because there's no way they end up together. He's marrying this like worn out ex-wienered lady. Anyway, but yeah, he must have so much dirt. He must have so much power. I mean, like you said, 40 years in there. It's not just how much dirt he has on people, I think, but it's also how many different relationships are tied into the business dealings. Because I 100% believe he's corrupt. There's zero question in my mind. So again, if he's saying, I'm going to blow the DNC up, I'm going to take you down, how much communication, how much backdoor dealing, how many different, insider stock trading tips, now that they're not allowed to trade stocks anymore, but how many tips is he going to release? And I guess the question is, will he remember? There's also that question. He could just make stuff up and people will be like, all right, yeah. Sure,
well, the thing is that Biden is fighting a losing fight. It's a fight that you can't win. Now, could he bring other people down with him? Theoretically, sure. But the problem is that if you go back and read the Emperor's New Clothes, the whole game is you have to be denying it. Like once a conversation has started about is the emperor wearing clothes or not, you've already lost. Mm-hmm. The whole point is that everyone has to be in lockstep denial. And so once we're having this conversation, now every senior moment he has is under the microscope. And also let's just say he wasn't senile. Who could survive the story being that for the months leading up to election day, everyone was questioning whether you were even fit to serve?
Yeah.
Everyone in your own political party questioning can we get anyone else in? We're so desperate for it to be anyone else other than you. It's just, this is the kiss of death. But it's going to be fun. I will say, if you followed Joe Biden's entire career, this is the send-off he deserves.
Absolutely, man. It's reap what you sow time. Like I'm enjoying every second of it. And also, it's funny too. Like you said, they're going to magnify everything, no matter what. Even if the media now, if they want him to stay in the race, because they were so complicit in hiding it all this time. And you saw those op-eds like, oh, we didn't know. Oh, how are we supposed? They fooled us too. Now they have to go extra hard to maintain any credibility on really amplifying every little screw up he makes.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. It's the same. I made the comparison before, but it's like Harvey Weinstein in Hollywood. It's like, well, at the next Oscars, they all got to be talking about Me Too and all this shit. Like they got to go really, really hard. And so you're right about that. It's a weird.
I'll be great at the Oscars. Everybody goes up, and next time, instead of the Me Too, everybody's really, really harping on like elder abuse and and recognizing Parkinson's early on every speech.
yeah. I mean, that might be it. All right. So, how long have you been a member of the Libertarian Party? I think for a while, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I wasn't a member until, there was a time when you joined, I joined, Tom joined, Pete Quinonez joined. We all kind of joined up at the same time, and it was to move Mises Caucus forward, to kind of get involved, take the party, which we did. And so I've been on there basically as long as you.
Because Mark Claire, who used to be at the Lions of Liberty with you.
Current Florida man, former Lion of Liberty.
Florida man, former Libertarian, Mark Claire. He, I believe, had been in longer. So then I wasn't sure if you had been or not. So you joined around the time I did.
Yeah, I joined around the time you did. Yeah, exactly. I think John Odermatt may have been in a little bit earlier because he was working in Pennsylvania to try to boost some candidates up in the party. But yeah, it was around 2018.
So it is wild. I'm sure you've taken stock of this as I have, that 2018 was like not that long ago. But it is amazing what a different world we are living in 2024 compared to 2018. 2018 felt pretty nuts, but this is before COVID, before Biden, before any of this stuff. It's kind of like watching now the state of politics with Bobby Kennedy running this year, with all the stuff that's happening with, of course, Chase Oliver being the Libertarian nominee. I don't know, just broad strokes themes. Like, how do you feel about how things have changed where we are now?
Well, not great. Not great. I mean, and by the way, I will tell you, best decision you ever made was not running. I have loudly defended your decision not to run. Because honestly, look at it this way, man. Once Kennedy entered the race, and I've talked to Angela about this, like once Kennedy got in the race, you running would have been a waste of time and talent, period. Because you could move the bar forward as far as like getting messaging out there, but he's taking so many votes off the table that would normally go to, say, a libertarian candidate. It would have been a waste of your time. I would rather you, if you ever have an interest, keep your powder dry so that you actually have a decent run at it where you don't have this competition pulling it off to the sides. So, well,
I'll say this, and this is kind of in some ways against my interest to say this, or I shouldn't say against my interest, but against the narrative that would be easier for me, because what's going to happen is that Chase Oliver is going to get a very low vote total. Yeah. And it would be like the easiest thing for me would be to take that and go, see, this is why you can't run woke libertarians, because look how much of a disaster it is, or blah. But the truth is that had Rechtenwald won, it would have been the same situation. Yeah. And then other, woke libertarians would have said, see, this is why you can't run a guy like that. The truth is that once RFK joined in, whoever the libertarian nominee was going to get a much lower vote total than Gary Johnson, and I think even than Joe Jorgensen. And it would have been ripe. This is not the reason I didn't run, but it would have been ripe for anyone to say, see, proof that this is a failure. And so that is the obstacle when you've got another third party in there. It's just Absolutely. The way it is.
And that's what the Mises Caucus haters, and there's many of them out there that are loud on Twitter. That's what they'll say after Chase fails. They'll say, well, this is because of failure in leadership. But anyway, to your question earlier, things are horrible, man. It's unbelievably more difficult to get any messaging out. I think we've gotten crazier. We've gotten so much more polarized. I mean, I do blame social media for a lot of that. Government censorship, I blame for a lot of it. The polarization of Facebook and the way the algorithms are set up, I blame for a lot of it. But yeah, things have gotten definitively worse. And what drives me crazy is that things have gotten so much worse observably. Like, I live in LA, right? It's a garbage shithole, right? And it used to be a little bit worse, but the homelessness problem, the cost of living, the immigration issues, these are so profound, and every Angelino can see them on the street corners. And yet, the bar's not really moving that much. That's what's kind of driving me most insane about this. Because if you see things observably, and we're talking about, like, in the UK, Labour just had this massive victory, overwhelming victory, despite crime and violence loss. In France, these idiots are in the street. These leftist morons are in the street cheering. And granted, some of them were very hot in the videos I saw. Really prime, gorgeous pieces of ass. But they're in the streets loudly saying that they've defeated fascism. And it's like, you just got gamed by a coup of elites, right? I mean, literally, you had elites in France drop 200 candidates out to consolidate power behind a few candidates and manipulate your process. And you're out there cheering it on, despite the fact that you have 100,000, not 100,000, whatever, 50,000 immigrants coming in, fighting age men from Africa that are not acculturating, that are on every street corner, that are causing homelessness and crime and violence. And yet these people are voting the same way. That's what's driving me insane about the overarching narrative of politics, is it doesn't seem to matter how bad things get. People still are voting the same way.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is sheathunderwear.com, the underwear of legends. I love sheathunderwear.com. I've been telling you about them for over 3 years now. They have been a fiercely loyal sponsor of this podcast, and I'm very grateful to them for that. And I also love that it's just a genuinely great product. I wear the underwear every single day. It's the most comfortable pair of boxer briefs you will ever own. So if you want to support a loyal sponsor of this show and and get the best pair of boxer briefs you're ever going to own while you're at it. Go on over to sheathunderwear.com. Make sure to use the promo code problem20 so you get 20% off your next order. That's sheathunderwear.com, promo code problem20 for 20% off your next order. All right, let's get back into the show. Yeah, one of the things that's interesting in our libertarian world about this is that libertarians, I should say, probably emphasize theory more than any other group of politically active people. I mean, even like there's socialists and stuff like that who emphasize their own theory. Obviously, we think their theory is wildly flawed, but even they are not committed in the way that libertarians are to like not break these principles and stand up for this way of thinking. And one of the things that's been kind of eye-opening to me that I've learned a lot from in the liberty movement over the last few years is how much the gap of what theory does not cover. And it makes you wonder, like, can the kind of Ron Paul coalition ever be really recreated under these? Like, for example, there were some people in the Libertarian Party who, there's been a lot of people who split off in different directions, but there are people who went and are supporting Biden now. One of the guys in the classical liberal caucus who was like the anti-Mises guy is now supporting Biden. And to me, it's like, look, I can understand an argument for supporting Chase. I can understand an argument for supporting Trump. I can understand an argument for supporting RFK. There's no conceivable argument I could get for let's support the deep state candidate. Like, let's support the establishment candidate. And there is something where even though a lot of those people and us, we would agree on guns and taxes and money and foreign policy, and not all of them, but with a lot of them, you're still like, wait, what are you missing here? That you would actually like how much have you internalized this propaganda that you actually think you're supposed to be on the side of the CIA? Like, that's who you would fall down on this? Like, you're celebrating that like Trump was framed for treason or Trump was kicked off of Twitter or something like that. You're like, how much have you been duped by this? It's not even a question of like whether you're like the things we used to all think. We used to all think the question was, how pure of a libertarian are you? How radical of a libertarian are you? The more pressing question in 2024 is like, do you get it? Do you get it at all? If there was like a right winger who might be really bad on a lot of different policies, like that I completely disagree with them about, they essentially, whether they realize it or not, they are fine with the status quo of central banking and the IRS and things like this. But if they hate the fucking establishment and see them as like corrupt monsters, I think I'm more likely to be aligned with you than I am to be aligned with a libertarian who would go to Biden afterward. A libertarian who would say, yeah, look, I don't believe in mask mandates, but I do think you should wear a mask. I don't believe in vax mandates, but I do think you should get the vaccine. I'm more aligned with that right winger. Even if in theory, me and you probably have more common ground, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's like you're saying, it's been astounding to see that shift. And I'm trying to figure out what the base cause of that is. I mean, I don't know if it's just it comes down to those base issues that people have of like, LGBTQ stuff or anti-racism. Like, remember, we took the plank out about anti-bigotry. That apparently was such a big schism in the party that, the classic liberal caucus that you're talking about. I'm not going to say the guy's name. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I hate him so much I don't want to promote him. But that drove people insane to the point where, to your point, there is no overlap. They abandoned all the basic philosophy and underpinnings of libertarianism. But that kind of ties into something that I've been thinking about that the party needs to do, right? And it's because, as you said, there's people that all we really want is core values of like hate the state, shrink the government, rein in the deep state. These are basic core aspects like personal property values, making sure people have the most freedom possible. If we can get people to buy into those core concepts, to your point, I don't really care about a lot of the other fringe stuff they might believe. Like, I really want to, as a goal, create what I call shitty libertarians. Like, that's really my goal with the party. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but I really want to create shitty libertarians for a couple of different reasons. Because number one, I think it's the only way we're going to have power. Yeah. If you think about this, you need people in mass. Like, look at the Democrats and who votes for them. They believe in a couple of core issues, and they let them get away with murder. They let them get away with abusing them, with power plays, with swapping candidates out, with inflationary processes, with denying, everything possible that's scummy on the underside of things. They ignore because they're fighting for, quote, women's rights or anti-racist rights, whatever it might be. These people are helpful idiots. Now, I'm not saying libertarians need to be idiots. We want to get higher quality people than that. But really, I just want people that check in to vote, that believe in reigning in the state, that believe in some core principles, and believe in an overarching vision of what we can deliver. But you have to promise something to do that, right? You have to give people a concept to believe in that says your life's going to be better under libertarianism. And that's one thing that we don't do right now. And I think that we lose so many people based on that fact who are driven out by the people that do understand the philosophy far too well. I mean, think about the number of libertarians who are just, they've read every book. They're just, these purist assholes who cannot get on board. Like you and me, we see eye to eye on the border issue, right? How the welfare state and the border issue, they can't
I remember
coexist.
talking about this. In fact, I remember me and you did, what was this show? Libertarians drinking liquor in their living room or whatever. And we were all just, must have been in 2016 or 2017 or something like that. And it was when I was first really starting to turn on the immigration issue, and we were like talking it through, and it was like this interesting conversation. It's like, all right, guys, like we're libertarians and we hate the government here. Like, does anyone else notice that the biggest statists amongst us seem to love this plan of unfettered immigration? Like, that's kind of weird. Do we have to cheer on their plans? You know what I mean? Like, just like on a very basic level, shouldn't we be against this then? Yeah,
exactly, man. But it's stuff like that. Yeah, we have so many, like, how much pushback do you get every time you do an episode talking about the border issue from, principled libertarians? Mm-hmm. They are, in fact, while they're useful in some aspects, I'm sorry, holding the party back. They are absolutely holding the party back because you can't expand on issues. And that dyed-in-the-wool philosophical, quote unquote, based aspect is good in some things, but it's really going to limit you to, autists and 1 to 3% of the vote. And that's what we get.
Well, I'll tell you, because I'm as a libertarian, I'm essentially a day walker. Like I'm half autist too. You know what I mean? But then I can go mix it up with the normals. And so there's a reason why, and this was even back when I was planning on running, I intentionally picked this fight. And part of it, I will say 50% of it is because I'm one of you. And it irks me that I think those libertarians are getting the theory wrong. Like, I don't think open borders are deduced from libertarian principles. And I don't think like you can do whatever you want on public property is deduced from libertarian principles. Whatever. I've done, several shows on this topic. But the other reason why when I was like, I guess I'm going to have to lead this charge, I was like, look, we got to have this out right now. Because again, if you're just thinking about the coalition that libertarians could theoretically put together, I think unlike in the Ron Paul days, when Ron Paul was running for president in 2008, it's like, okay, well, we live in a different world than 2008. And in Ron Paul's coalition, I think you could have some open borders people and some more, immigration restrictionist type people all be in the same. What we really care about is this damn war and the economy that just crashed and all these things. Today, if your starting point is I'm for open borders, and also I think in San Francisco or Los Angeles that is the homeless people's right to take a shit on the sidewalk. If that's your starting point, there's just no coalition to be had. Your coalition is, I don't even know. Listen, even when you say the 1% or something like that, it's not as if Gary Johnson or Joe Jorgensen were ever saying that out loud. If they said that out loud, I don't even think they could put that coalition together. So it's like your coalition is 36 people on Twitter, man. If you're seriously going to look the American people and look, even if I think the theory's wrong, even if you thought the theory was correct, there's just kind of this is reality. If you look any American in the face right now and tell them, my plan is to immediately open the borders, good luck. I mean, amongst Democrats, good luck. Good luck with that.
Yeah, the number one issue in America, it's economy and it's immigration. That's it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a non-starter. It's a non-starter to begin with. But to the point of how do you reach people, right? So you think about it this way, and this is what I was kind of teasing a little bit when we were chatting before the show, and what we're working on with the Libertarian Party messaging. You need to have those core issues, right? But explain them. So we do. Immigration's fine. You can't have a welfare state when you have that. But on top of it, I think you need to have this kind of religious fervor, right? Like I'm saying, you need to promise people more. For example, parental rights, right? Those are under attack, especially in California. They're trying to break people up, the LGBTQ stuff, the trans stuff, taking your kids out of the home if you don't use personal pronouns. There's a war in the family. Why does that exist? Okay, well, the party, we're going to promise to give you that family back. We're going to promise to give you community back. And what I mean by that is like, there's a war on just community interactions now. There's a war on an understanding of truth, promising that we're going to rein in the deep state, rein in censorship so you can actually understand the world around you. These are issues that people, I think, don't realize that are going through the intellectual cycle at any given time, but you're seeing it play out in line in different ways. You're seeing it play out in the realities of how people interact, of where they understand the world and how they're realizing the lies are coming through. But as I mentioned, the problem, and I want to get your take on this, why do you think we're realizing this? So many people you talk to, especially after COVID, realize they've been lied to, but continuously vote the same way. I mean, what's your take on that? Because you asked me mine earlier, and I'm curious to hear what your take on it is.
Well, I mean, there's probably a different answer for different groups, but the general theme is that like people are under spells, and they really are like, like in the Matrix when Neo is offered the blue pill or the red pill, and then he chooses the red pill, and then we get a whole movie. I just think there's a lot of people who take the blue pill when they're given that offer, and then they go back to sleep and don't remember ever being offered the pill or whatever. And that's, I think like that's what's brilliant about that movie. There's something to that like people choose to like, I know I just saw that. I would like to take the pill where I unsee it and go back and wake up as normal, because it's just, for most people who aren't like obsessed with this stuff the way we are, they're like, this is just too much. If this is all bullshit, then I got to devote my whole life to like understanding what this bullshit is. But if it's not, I get to go back to just all the shit that I cared about doing. And so I really do think, now that being said, I have over the last 4 years or so, I have been flabbergasted by the ability of people to do this. And nothing to me was clearer than during COVID, where you're like, dude, this is wrecking your life. This is wrecking your family's life. This is wrecking your city. This is wrecking, and so many millions of Americans would still just be like, yep, but it makes me feel better. Like I bought into it, and I'd rather not admit I was wrong. Yeah, exactly. Well, okay, so perfect. Exactly. So tying into that, that's why I am changing the philosophy of how the party is rolling out. Because, like you said, nobody wants to admit they're wrong. And everything we do, right, as libertarians, from a party perspective, even from what we do, it's always complaining, bitching, we're going to take this down, we're going to tear it down, you've been lied to, you're a moron. This is not effective. I mean, telling somebody they're a moron, it never works. It will never work, even if they're clearly wrong. And, how many Twitter debates have you won? How many have I won? They never are like, you know what, you're right, man. Yeah. I'm gonna join up tomorrow. It doesn't happen. So instead, I stopped doing them. For that reason. I mean, not like I'll still do debates and stuff, but I'm not doing debates with like random LP members anymore, because it's like, it doesn't matter. I've proven that it doesn't matter how dominantly I win or how much your case collapses. It's like, I'm just going to make a lifelong enemy out of you. I don't need to do that. People in the LP, and you're talking about people in the LP, not just random everyday schlubs off the street that don't even understand anything. Yeah. So I think, okay, how are you going to do this? You have to take what people want, and then you have to say, all right, we have to change the narrative here to say you're not wrong, you're not stupid. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to add on top of it, right? You have to make a guarantee, and this is what we're bad at too. We never will put a balls on the table and be like, we're going to promise to make your life better. Because, intellectually, we don't like to be liars. We're logical people. We're critical thinkers. Everything we do is kind of based in reality, right? Austrian economics, that's what we believe in, is telling the truth and analyzing the marketplace as it exists. But what we need to do, and has to be done, is to say, okay, what in our philosophy can we promise that can be extended into the future? And it's easy to do that with like the Federal Reserve, with monetary value, with, different monetary measures, Bitcoin in case the society collapses and our dollar's worth nothing.
ending the war state. Like, there's so many things we can promise that can be better, but we've been either too pussified to do it or too, I don't know, philosophically based to do it, where we feel like we're lying to people, but you have to do it. And on top of that, like we're talking about, they take the pill and they don't want to look back. I think you need to build, and I'm putting this in, you can call them parables if you want, but they are basically stories that people can read and remember. And one of them, I'll tell you, was inspired by a debate that you did with Moldbug. And the concept of this parable is called, the stability of a million strings. And I remember before you guys were talking about like a basalt pillar, and he was arguing that you have to have government to keep that pillar up, right? Because people are pushing on both sides. I don't know if you remember this, but it's stuck in my mind.
I think his argument was like, once the pillar is up, it's fine to have no government. But when the pillar is all the way down, you need government force to push it back up. It wasn't much of an argument. It was more of just a metaphor.
Right.
But there was a lot thrown at me in that debate. But yes, anyway, I think that's an accurate representation of his point.
Close enough. But I took that and I'm like, okay, I wrote a parable about it, which is the parable of a million strings. But the concept is you can have no more stability. And this applies to the marketplace, right? This is what the metaphor for. You can have no greater stability than a pillar that is held up by a million different chains pulling on every single direction at all times, which is the marketplace, right? As soon as you start adjusting that and letting different people pull different ways, then you completely fuck the system. So it's like, giving people simple stuff to remember in that parable manner to inspire them, to let them know that, like, this is the way. And like diversification of risk, I think, is something we don't really harp about enough, because our entire financial system is on the verge of collapse. Our military system, our entire world order is on the verge of collapse because we don't diversify risk anymore. We're in these massive conglomerated groups of states and economies and financial systems. And it's like, giving people this belief that we can make the world better and safer is what we don't do well enough. And it has to be addressed.
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Entera Skincare. Their founder, Nick Andrews, is a biomedical engineer by training and a former pharmaceutical industry maven, and an enjoyer of martial arts. He often found his skin worn and in bad shape after contact with the mats, as well as his sparring partners. Moreover, the few products out there that worked well had side effects, and he wasn't willing to put up with that. So he launched Entera Skincare. Entera Skincare's mission is to revolutionize the skincare and hair regrowth industry by offering cutting-edge, scientifically advanced products that deliver real, tangible results. They provide their customers with the most effective solutions for skincare and hair regrowth needs, backed by rigorous research and development. The team at Entera strives to empower individuals to feel confident, beautiful, rejuvenated, embracing their unique skin through their luxurious and innovative product range. The Ageless Bundle isn't just about skincare products, it's an investment in a skincare transformation. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to transform your skincare routine. Use the promo code PROBLEM for 10% off at checkout. That's promo code PROBLEM for 10% off at enteraskincare.com. enteraskincare.com, promo code PROBLEM for 10% off. All right, let's get back into the show. I also think that there's, for whatever reason, the libertarianism as a philosophy attracts a lot of weirdos. And I don't begrudge them. I love libertarians. Like, that's cool. You're into the same philosophy I'm into, but there is something where weirdos have a tough time reaching normal people. And there's no even and it doesn't seem, Jordan Peterson had this thing back in the day that I always thought was very wise. You've probably heard it, but where he would say so the communists claim that they're motivated by helping the poor. It's like, okay, that's your claim. And then there's something very Austrian about this, that he goes, let's, it's kind of like demonstrated preference. Well, okay, let's examine that versus what you actually do. Are you motivated by helping the poor, or are you motivated by hurting the rich? Well, what did communism actually do? What did the communists actually do when given power? And then the libertarian version of that is that it's like, hey, are you actually motivated by spreading these ideas, by seeing them implemented, by helping people? Or are you motivated by feeling like you're superior to everybody else because you get a perfect A+, 100 plus 5 bonus points on your non-aggression principle test that you give yourself. And one example that I saw, and this guy, his name was Mark, I believe. I saw this. I just had a brief interaction with him like months ago, where basically it was something like he was going like, hey, you know, like libertarians, I'm on board with like this whole program and I'm a member of the LP, but I open borders is crazy to me, man. Like you got to have, and then he's just flooded with a bunch of people like, then get out. You're not a real libertarian. And then I chimed in and I was like, just so you know, dude, you don't have to go anywhere. Cause like so many of the best libertarian thinkers also rejected open borders. And like a lot of people in the party do. And like, so you don't have to like leave anywhere. And he was like, okay, cool. Thanks. I appreciate that. And it's like this weird thing where, look, man, it's not even that they would go have the common sense to go, okay, hey, this is a guy who's with us on everything else, has an issue with one issue. Let's try to keep this guy around. We'll never get anywhere if we kick everybody out who's like not perfect on every single issue. And then it was also the aspect that it's not like any of these people were trying to convince him. It's not like any of them were going like, well, listen, let me break this down for you. You see, like, which, okay, like try at least to make an argument. Well, the real problem here is the welfare. The real problem isn't the whatever the libertarian argument would be. But no one's even trying to convince them. They're just trying to pat themselves on the back. Like, I'm completely pure and you're not. And that whole thing is like cancer. It's like got to get removed. If you ever want to grow in any meaningful way, you have to abandon this idea that you have to abandon the fact that your primary motivator is feeling really good about yourself, because that's actually pretty stupid. It makes no sense to feel really good about yourself because you believe in a theory. Like, okay, even if it's the correct theory, so what? You got to do something before you can feel really good about yourself over it.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like, again, going back to, I want to create shitty libertarians. I'm sick of these principled people who all they do is attack. All they do is want to control. Like, I mean, look, dude, we were both at the convention. You see what happens there. You see these people that fight tooth and nail over this like tiny fiefdom, right? And it's a tiny fiefdom that these people, they hold sway over this party, and it's all they care about. You know, it's granted autistic focus, but it's all they care about, and being right in that little space. And they don't give a shit about actually impacting anybody. They don't give a shit about really impacting the world as long as they maintain their values. Like, dude, Jacob Hornberger, former Mises Caucus darling. What happened to that guy is crazy. And he is like the poster child. And, you know, Jacob's a nice enough guy, but poster child for irrelevance and attacking the party consistently now, you know, vocally attacking the party on Twitter and in speeches and anything he can do to tear down the current leadership, because he wants to be mired in irrelevance and principle. Yeah. And this is predominant in the party. If we can sub half the people out for people that just have some rationality, and like I said, a base belief in freedom, liberty, reigning in the government, that otherwise don't give a shit, we will be so much more powerful, so much more likable, so much more. The growth is exponentially possible, especially now. I mean, you have polls of like 60% of the population wants a third party. Desperately, they see the corruption and they're like, okay, let me look at the Libertarian Party and have some asshole call me a fucking libtard because I disagree with, you know, the philosophy in one base point. And to your position, not convince me in any way, not make any rational argument that's going to make me think twice about looking at this party. It's just going to piss me off.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, man, it's unbelievable. I mean, personally, you know, from obviously, like, I'm a little biased and coming from my own perspective on this, but it would be something where like, the amount of people, and look, it was a minority in the party for sure, but the people who just like still to this day just hate my guts, like within the Libertarian Party. And it's like, dude, listen, even if everything you say is true, you're like, okay, so let's just say you're right and I'm wrong. So I'm bad on immigration and I'm bad on people jerking off in playgrounds or something like that or whatever. Like, okay, but like I'm good on everything else. Like, even by your own standards, like, I'm good on everything else. And, oh, hey, I get on big shows and I say it in a compelling way. And 90% of the time, 99% of the time that I'm ever on, like, big platforms, I'm almost never talking about immigration or homeless junkies shooting up on the street. Like, that rarely comes up. But so, like, even that, it's like, but the passion that they hate me with, and many people in the Mises caucus, it's like, yeah, again, it's revealing. It's like, okay, so what you really care about is this fiefdom. Now, by the way, with the Jacob Hornberger stuff, as I'm sure most of my audience isn't like super aware of this, but I know he would accuse me if I said this of being like, oh, you're just ad hominem. You're not responding to the arguments. But I mean, the arguments are so deranged. There's nothing to respond to. Like, it's like there is nothing. It's simply that people who are single, who don't have kids, a lot of them did not do well through COVID. Yeah. That's really my explanation to it. It's like, oh man, dude, like solitary confinement was not good for people who did not have anybody in solitary. Well, I guess it wouldn't be solitary then, but who didn't have other people with them. It was not good for them. Anyway, one of the things that you mentioned in there that I think is really worth expounding on is the idea of stories, the idea of things that are going to sell to like or potentially could sell to a large group of people. And it's another thing that I think libertarians have to grapple with, that look, the Declaration of Independence is like the most beautiful document ever written. And I doubt you'd find too many libertarians who would have like a major problem with the Declaration of Independence. But there's a reason why it's not a treatise on Austrian economics. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's a reason why they're not getting up there and going, obviously they didn't know this at the time, but like we've figured out that value is subjective and like something, you know what I mean? It's like, look, is it actually self-evident that God thinks we have inalienable rights? Probably not. Okay. And I say this to somebody who does believe in God. Is it self-evident? No, you'd probably have to make an argument there. It's probably not just pretty obvious if you look at human, but it doesn't matter. That's how it starts off, with that declaration, because that's something people can like, that tugs at your insides. That like, it's something that like pulls at your heart. And this is another thing that I think is really missing from libertarians' understanding of how to interact with people. Okay, you're correct in theory. Okay, so now what? Well, that's pretty useless unless you can do something with it. And how do you do something with it? Well, you have to have something compelling to say to people. And you have to think about what actually moves them. And most of the time, it's not the same thing that moves Liberty Twitter.
Well, and also, look, you're coming from a position of we have no power. Right. Let's all acknowledge that we have no power. The only power we have might be thanks to Angela McArdle getting Donald Trump to commit to freeing Ross Ulbricht and to putting a libertarian in his cabinet. That's the closest we've come to power ever. So, let's think about that. When you have no power, your power is in manipulation. Your power is in inspiration. Your power is in storytelling and putting a little seed in people that can grow. I mean, like you're saying, you have to make a philosophical jump. You have to make a belief jump to say, we're going to promise you this and we're going to deliver it. And you have to say it vociferously. You have to say it with conviction. And that's, again, like what the website reflects now, what our entire premise has to be is to convince people that regardless of what they might see, right, that behind the scenes, this is happening. This is the future. This is the way. The Democrats do this all the time. Look at what the Democrats promise, depending on and what they deliver. It's pure trash. And yet people double, triple down. They will vote for Democrat. They will never say the GOP. Same thing. We're going to return to the old days, and you're going to have a wife in the kitchen and a one car. And you're not going to, bullshit. None of that's going to happen. You're still going to have guineas on your block. It's just going to happen. None of this. It's all bullshit promises, but they put it in a way that is inspirational. And libertarian philosophy does not. I mean, nothing about our philosophy is promissory. Nothing about it is, if you think about it, inspirational. Like I was saying before, it's all very cut and dry. It's all tear it down, and people can't handle the shock mentally of that. This is another problem with not to keep bragging on Hornberger, but I used to be, and you actually convinced me to be an anarchist, but there's believing in anarchy and saying we need to be anarchist, and then there's vocalizing, hey, if we take power, we are going to instantaneously tear everything down you've ever known. Fucking retarded. No one is going to believe it. Libertarians don't even want that. I don't want that. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't want my society to collapse on me, instantly tomorrow. We all talk about mashing the button, but it's not a good idea to mash the button. And the button's
imaginary anyway. It's all made up. The button doesn't exist.
Exactly. So it's like you have to have this idea, but then also on a secondary level, we have to promise people a better future. But I do think there's something also to the concept of, look, what does happen if society collapses? Because all these different parties, they don't promise that, they're just saying, look, things are going to go on forever. We keep spending money. We change this and that, but the American empire is going to continue. I think there's something to be said for the Libertarian Party taking the tact of this shit is not going to last. It's going to collapse, and we're trying to set you up to succeed when it fails. You ask me who's going to build the roads? Guess what? You're going to have to figure that out once society collapses, once the empire is completely in ruins, which is infinitely possible. And here, we're going to give you the tools to succeed on your own. We're going to teach you how to do this. We're going to teach you how to govern. We're going to teach you how to think. We're going to give you the opportunity to have guns and grow your own fucking food and raise your children where you don't have to depend on the government for these things because it may not be there.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I'm sure you've switching gears a little bit here, but we kind of talked about like how much has changed in the last few years. Obviously, we mentioned Mark Claire before, but he's certainly not the only one. There's been a lot of people who have come into the movement, who have left the movement. I mean, certainly, like I know a lot of people who found me during COVID and then kind of like came into the libertarian world through that because, libertarians were good. Or at least the good ones were.
Not from the party platform perspective.
No, but, not necessarily. But that was, yes. The old guard was not good on it. But what do you make of, say, like the people, and I'm not even saying this describes Mark necessarily, but the people who have kind of moved to the hard right from who were in our world before that?
I think, like you were saying before, I think that there's two ways that COVID can break people's brains. And one of them is to force people to the hard right. During COVID, the Libertarian Party was not strong on it. I mean, they weren't. People like us were, but we don't have power. It's going back to my point about power. These people, I think, went harder to the right because during COVID, they had a crisis where they didn't have a job. They're having their livelihood taken away, and they feel completely powerless to change it. And they go, okay, the Libertarian Party is not going to do anything to help me right now. Maybe going with a hardcore GOP version is what has to be done to protect my freedoms and protect my liberties. And that's why I'm going to pivot to that position. And maybe I'm sacrificing some of my previously held beliefs here, but I'm looking at what works when the rubber hits the road. And I think that's a lot of it, especially when you're in that isolated version. Some people went left and they said, you got to get vaccinated so I can go live my life. Other people went right and said, why is
we got to kill the people who want me to be vaccinated?
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah. But I mean, that to me, it makes a lot of sense. It's just, especially like burnout is so high in the libertarian world in general because of the frustration of not being able to actually move the needle in any meaningful fashion. Yeah.
No, I would. I mean, that is a struggle of the hard right. Also, it's not as if they're moving the needle much more. But yeah, I get your point. It's been interesting to kind of watch. I also do think there's something, if we're talking about the idea of something that could really catch fire, that could win a lot of people over, that has a potential to be a big movement. I do think there's something on. I've noticed this dynamic for a long time, but there's something on the hard right where people get further and further into their own world. I guess you could call it an echo chamber or something like that, but where they do lose sense of the broader culture that you live in and what is feasibly possible within this, like it's like you mentioned before, like this idea of like the TradCon thing is very popular today. And I do understand it as a response to the woke left. It's almost like guaranteed that this would happen.
By the way, who's leading that? Is it women or men?
I don't know.
I mean, honestly, the feminists, they've ruined everything for themselves. I can't.
Yeah, even the TradCons are women.
Yeah, they're all women.
Good.
Right? They're all the TradCon influence I see are all women. It's not men.
There is something about like hardcore TradCon women where they'll be saying something to you, and even if it's like a good point, you're like, okay, good point. Could we take this point to the kitchen? Right. What are we doing? What are we doing out here with points? This is kind of the man's world. But I remember I remember talking to Christopher Cantwell in, I think it was 2017. Yes, it was 2017 because it was
Tiki Torch Cantwell.
No, I think it was post. I think it was immediately after, like 2 weeks after or something like that. And I remember talking to him. It might have been a few weeks before. I'm not sure, but it was right around that time. Like he had left. He was not a libertarian anymore. But I remember he said to me at one point, and like I was just kind of like starting to build my career for myself. I think I'd done Rogan for the first time, and I'd done like some other big shows, but I didn't have nearly as many, like the following that I have now. But he said to me at one point that he was like, he goes, I really feel bad for you, Dave, because, you're in a tough position here because you're a Jew, but, you're a fairly honest one. And when the ethno state comes, I'm not sure what's going to happen with you. But like, if I have anything to say about it, you'll be cool. Like you'll be allowed in or something like that. And I remember saying to him, and I said a tempered version of this, but I was like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, what world are you living? You think you're about to achieve your ethno state? Yeah. And I think I said, like, Chris, the way I can see it, I'm setting up a pretty nice career for myself, and you are certainly going to end up dead or in jail. Like that seems to be more, but he genuinely believed when he was saying it to me that it's like, nah, dude, this is about to kick off and you're going to be in a weird situation. And I do think, while perhaps not that blatant, I do find a lot of this on the hard right, where there is almost this, they've bought so much into their own little world that they don't recognize how much, dude, none of this will ever play with like broadly with Americans. It's just not going to happen. Like, what do you think? You think we're going to live in a Catholic theocracy? Why would Catholicism win that? What world are you living in? Like, it's just, this is also, it's as ridiculous as when libertarians think we're going to be in an anarchist society, like tomorrow, like, oh my God, libertarians, wake up. If we can make things a little bit less worse in the next 20 years, that's phenomenal. That's way better than we're on pace to do right now.
Right, exactly. That's the thing. Like, I mean, and look,
everyone needs to wake up.
Everyone needs to wake up. I mean, well, the good news is for the first time, right? We've got Javier Milei, which some people still attack, for whatever else. But it's like kind of that same thing of like, look, guys, can you just shut the fuck up and just let the man work a little bit and let's just see how this plays out? Because if he's successful, and yeah, I'm not a fan of him saying he wants to join NATO, but if he's successful economically with what he's doing, we have now a case study to point to for the first time in history since the founding of America to say, look, we can unfuck this thing. We can unfuck the system if we just give him a chance. So please stop tearing him down. But yeah, to your point, people get in their delusional psycho states. I don't know how people get to belief systems that they get to without any sort of check on reality. I mean, it really boggles my mind how people can achieve that, because it's like we're saying, like looking around, when observably you can see where the culture is moving, how the power players interact, what the corporate media can do to destroy you, take you out. And especially now with the whole deplatforming thing, if you were going to have an ethno state, if you had anybody behind that they thought, I mean, look what happened to Marie Le Pen. She doesn't want an ethno state, but as close as you're going to get in our modern society of getting an ethno state was Marie Le Pen. And they completely undercut her by dropping 200 candidates out in prison. There's zero possibility of it.
Well, I feel the same way about some of the people in the Free State Project, which, by the way, I still to this day, I think the Free State Project is a great idea. And I think there's been like tangible successes from it. And I totally support anybody who wants to go participate in it. I think it's like a great strategy to embark on. But I will hear a lot of people up there in New Hampshire talking about how they're only a few years away from seceding from the union. And you're like, dude, listen, like, you guys got to be honest with yourselves here. Do you not listen, even if you take over the state, which you haven't already, you know what I mean? Like, it's not as if you've taken over a state. You have influence in that state, but there's still a lot of Democrats up there in New Hampshire. And like, actually, Nikki Haley did pretty good in her primary in New Hampshire.
Yeah, shockingly.
Yeah. But it's like, dude, do you not realize where we're at as a national government right now? If you think there is any chance that under current situations or anything close to current situations, they'd allow you, do you know what they would do before they'd allow any state in this union to secede right now? If you're curious, just take a look at the last time a group of states tried to secede, and they were willing to fight a war over it. And they're
going to have to reinstate slavery just to free the blacks to take out New Hampshire.
Sure, right, exactly. We will fight you with our army of conscripted black people, New Hampshire. Now, we will be doing most of this fighting in the summer. I'll grant you that. But anyway, yeah, it is just it's hard, especially I think you're really on to something there. And this is true for dissidents across the political spectrum, that it's hard when you're losing so bad to not retreat to a fantasy. You know, it's hard to not retreat to some fantasy where you're going to be the goddamn hero and fuck all these guys up. But if you actually want to be the hero and fuck all these guys up, the first step is dealing with reality.
Yeah, but that's the irony, right? The irony is we're shitting on people that are living in the libertarian fantasy world. And meanwhile, I'm on here pitching like, I'm pitching a brand new libertarian fantasy world, and I need you guys to buy in. I need the mass population to buy into my new libertarian fantasy.
Well, you know, you can manifest things into reality, but they have to have a basis in reality in order to do it. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals so you can know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. It also tracks your cycle as well as the onset of menopause, so you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/problem to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/problem for 15% off your purchase. Big thank you to Lumen for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back into it. Let me ask you, as we're coming up toward the end of our time here, there's obviously been a big split within the Libertarian Party over the presidential elections. I understand you are, you know what I mean, like you have a job at the party, so maybe there's like some things you shouldn't say or can't say. But
I don't get paid well, so don't worry.
Okay, so there. All right, so fuck it. So you're not risking too much. You're just a communications director. What does talking about stuff have to do with that job? But so obviously there are some people in the party who are supporting Chase Oliver. There are this kind of, I don't know how to say it. I don't want to upset anyone, but this kind of open secret deal that's being made with Donald Trump. There's one, was it in Colorado? I think they're getting behind Bobby Kennedy. This is bizarre. I've never seen anything like this happen before in the Libertarian Party. What are your thoughts on all of it, or who do you think libertarians should support? Should they support anyone? I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, look, I do endorse. Well, look, if you believe in Chase, if you believe in his message, if you believe in libertarian philosophy, vote for Chase. Go for it. Angela's premise is that Donald Trump is going to be a better option. He's going to, as we said, closest to power we're ever going to get is probably with the Donald Trump presidency, if he lives up to his promises. And who knows if he will or not. But you know what? He made the promises. If we can get a libertarian in his cabinet, that's unbelievable. Chase Oliver, I think, he provides a problematic candidate. You know this. You yourself said I'm distancing myself from the party because of this, which is fine. But it's one of those things where the purists, and again, this is the problem with the purists who I want shittier libertarians. You've got purists that are so outraged by Chase Oliver, who is on 95% of things that libertarians care about, probably spot on. I mean, to a T, probably spot on with you. But that 5% of, one of our hot button issues, which is trans and what you do with the kids, and of course, COVID, where he was not explicitly saying to get your vaccinations, but is taking photos with Pfizer, those are things that obviously are going to piss a lot of people off.
Well, the thing, by the way, can I just, and please don't lose your train of thought. I just want to say this before I forget it. I think the celebrating when Donald Trump got kicked off of Twitter might be the worst one for me. Because it's again, it's not that the distinction is even theory. It's like blue pill, red pill shit. It's like, oh, dude, do you not see what's going on here? You're cheering on the thing that will destroy us. Like, the only hope we have is to have some degree of freedom on the internet to be able to talk about this stuff. And without that, it's over. And like, oh, you so don't get it that you think this is a win because what, the racist man is gone or something like that. But anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
Well, it's like, just, it's kind of like Lou Rockwell before he went off the deep end with Israel. He had
Did he go? What do you mean off the deep end with Israel?
Not Lou Rockwell. Sorry, not Lou Rockwell.
Walter Block.
Walter Block. Sorry, Walter Block.
How dare you besmirch Lou Rockwell?
Walter Block
went off the deep end.
Yeah.
Yes.
Emperor Goody, Emperor Baddie, right? There is a lot to that. When you have the Biden administration, all the evils of that administration, the overarching authoritarianism, lawfare, their immigration stuff, everything about the Biden administration is an affront to libertarianism in every possible way. So yes, I endorse us supporting Donald Trump in states where it could be a swing state. You can cast your vote for Chase, and that might, make you feel good inside. And look, I will do everything. We're doing everything we can to try to support Chase, where it's going to be good for everybody, right? And it's not a hot button issue.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like we were talking about earlier, Kennedy is taking so many votes away that it's going to be up to you to decide. If you want to vote on your philosophy, go for Chase. If you want to try to sway the measure of freedom back towards some modicum of normalcy, I'm sorry, but you have to look at Donald Trump and go, this is a reasonable option here, because the other option is psychotic. We're over. America's done. I mean, Kamala Harris, I don't think I'm being too hyperbolic here. Kamala Harris is going to take over the presidency if Biden wins. There's no chance that doesn't happen.
She'll probably take it over before November, but yeah, it's
likely.
But 100% certainty, Kamala Harris will be president if Joe Biden is reelected. No, I'll say this, the way I look at it, and this is kind of the closest I guess I'd say to, or whatever. I mean, this is just honestly where I'm at. Look, if my choices in 2008 is I can vote for Barack Obama, or I can vote for John McCain, or I can vote for Ron Paul, or something like that. Let's say you're in the Republican primary still. This is like 100 billion times out of 100 billion times, I'm voting for Ron Paul because I don't care. First of all, there's this huge movement with a ton of enthusiasm behind him. He's drawing gigantic crowds. He's breaking fundraising records. He's opening up the minds of the next generation in a way that nobody else is. And also, he is actually the answer to saving the republic. Like, he's the only shot we have to actually save this thing. It's sure disaster with either of the other two, and we save the republic with this guy. And he's the greatest human being in the world. Just easy decision for me. That's not the world we live in anymore. And right now, the corporate media is trying their best to demonize this Project 2025 stuff, which is like, it's the things that they're even picking out of it are like, it's all these kind of like hot button issues that just honestly, the abortion pill or something like that. Like, that's what you're supposed to vote on. Look, if the choice was between Project 2025, and there's plenty of shit in there that I disagree with, but if the choice was between that or the choice was WEF, central bank digital currency, eat bugs, own nothing, and be happy, if that's the choice, I pick Project 2025 100 billion times out of 100 billion times. Now, by the way, I don't even think Donald Trump's
care.
I don't even think Donald Trump's going to implement any of it. I think the choice is more likely between Trump's last term and the fear of what all this other stuff might be. But there's really no question that, like, if I'm getting in the game of voting, I'm not even considering Chase Oliver, because it's not like any of those things that I mentioned with the Ron Paul campaign are there. There's no movement being created out of this guy's candidacy. This isn't opening up people's minds. I'll open up more people's minds by talking on my podcast than by supporting this guy for president. It's just like complete. None of that's there. I don't trust the guy. I don't think he showed good character. He doesn't seem to get it on any level. You know what I mean? Like, if you were not against the COVID insanity and instead you were saying like, hey, I had Thanksgiving, by the way, Thanksgiving. This is November of 2020. Okay. You've had March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. You're in November now, and you were still bragging about how you're having masks indoors at your dinner. I don't care where you are on guns. I don't care. It's meaningless to me. I don't care if you understand Austrian economics at that point, which I've never seen him demonstrate that he does. But regardless of that, I'm just saying it's like, that's not even on the radar to me. The question is, do I actually want to invest the time to go down and cast a ballot for Donald Trump or not? I live in a blue state. He's not going to win it anyway. I'm not like particularly motivated to do that. But that's where I'm at, is that's the only decision to be made.
Well, I mean, like I said, we sent out a recent email I wrote. It's like the party's still the party. So look, I would say if you're in a blue state, go out, cast a vote, support the party, because the ballot access is always a fight anyway. You want to maintain that public presence. But to your point about Chase, not creating a movement, he frustrated the living shit out of me because all of his campaign stuff, during Pride Month is happening, but he's going to gay pride parades and almost exclusively. That was where Chase Oliver could be found. Let me ask you, who's going to be voting libertarian at a gay pride parade? Is there one person you're going to talk to that's going to change their mind and decide to vote libertarian instead of voting for the Biden-Harris ticket? No. You're wasting your time. You're wasting campaign fund. You're wasting money. It just doesn't make any sense. So to your point, look, vote for the party. You're not voting for Chase. Vote for the party. Go in your state and vote, if it doesn't matter. And I said, I'm in California. I'm going to vote for Chase Oliver. I'm voting for the Libertarian Party in California.
Well, there you go.
If you don't live here, God bless you, man. You use your own decisions. Make your own choices.
Yeah, no, listen, I get where you're coming from. All right, well, Brian, I really enjoyed this, man. We got to do it again. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming on, brother.
A pleasure, sir. Awesome to see you as always.
You too, brother. All right, guys, thanks for listening. Catch you next time. Peace.